Hello, meatbags. This is the ISO. It's midnight. I mean, it, midnight. The meatbag. Um, man, I don't know why that gets hard. Gets harder and harder to click every time. But yep, here I am again. Once again, asking you to lend your ear for me to talk into. I I feel the need to talk into the void again. Because I am on a new drug this time. So I'm still on the Lexapro, but this time they added Seroquel on top of it. Um, if you know anything about Seroquel, it makes you very drowsy. Um, I slept for 12 hours. I, I can't get stuff done if I'm doing that every day. So I'm gonna I think I'm gonna ride this out for a couple more days and see how it goes. And the waking hours are pretty bad. They're not bad. They're just not great. Um, so the thing about antidepressants is what they do is they raise the floor for your mood, but they also bring the ceiling down a little bit too. So you can't really feel like good necessarily, like really good. Like it kind of you kind of bounce off the ceiling a little bit. And today I'm feeling a lot like my I'm feeling a lot more like my avatar, feeling like a robot. Um, I want to talk through the stress too. So like I'm still stressed out. I'm still having like issues with like emotional stability too. So I'm down or I'm like zombie. Like at least with just the Lexapro, I felt like good towards the end of the day. Like I mean, I needed distractions to do it, but yeah. So Um, I'm gonna continue talking about my childhood and pick up where I left off. Um, I uh, I neglected to mention that my stepdad had a family cottage up north. It's like a 2 hour drive to get there, so it's out in the forest. So it's like and it's on a lake, so it's like really kind of out there and basically the hold on, I gotta fix the resolution according to the hold on, I gotta fix this resolution for the stream because it's not gonna do ultra low latency. So I need to change that. So it might drop the stream temporarily. Okay. I forgot I needed to turn off the buffer to do this, so all right, I'm gonna dip for one more second. Okay. All right. Stream is back. Hopefully it didn't completely drop it. Um test. Hold on, I gotta go to the channel to check to make sure everything's straight. Um, buffer back on. All right, cool. All right, that's live. All right, welcome back, meatbags. Okay, so yeah, we have a family cottage. And I was pretty young, so I only remember snippets of it, but it the original form that it was in, like with all the trees and like kind of how the front looked, because we changed the cottage dramatically over the years, like the landscaping, taking out trees and stuff like that. But it's embedded it like the original form has embedded itself into my memory, specifically into my dreams. So whenever I dream of being up at the cottage, I remember this original version of the cottage. But we go up there in the summer. It's a mobile home, so and it's like out in the wilderness. So it's all mostly except for it's mostly off grid except for the power. So the power is the only thing that's like a modern convenience up there. Like it's propane and there's no city sewage or anything like that. So, but we have like a dock that goes out. The dock had like it had like a floating section out, like you'd walk along the catwalk, and then it'd be like a floating dock basically. But we had a speedboat, and the speedboat, we'd go in like tube and stuff like that. Um, and I don't remember any specific stuff from it. I'm just describing the place, but um, it was between home and the cottage. Like those are like the two places that are like the embedded, like in my memory kind of thing. Um, but I'm gonna go back a little bit. I had My dad had actually moved to an apartment, and I remembered the place, like what it looked like, but the one thing that I noticed or remembered was doing like there's like big windows on the place, and we were throwing a frisbee around. That was like a memory that I shared with him. He's like, "Oh, I can't believe you remembered that," and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I remember that." But so I had moved into the new house with my sister, my stepdad, and my mom, and like I was in the first grade. Basically, the thing about elementary school is that you go in at a certain age, and I went in earlier than I should have, and I had mental problems. I don't remember being fitted for glasses. So it might have been in first grade when I got glasses. Because I don't remember. I don't have the records of it, but um, I was extremely nearsighted, and that initially didn't lend itself to being bullied. That didn't come till like way later on. So I distinctly, and I'm gonna hop around with what I remember, but I'm gonna go with the most prominent thing first. I don't know if it happened first or not, but we had a bunch of different like kids that I specifically remember. Um, but I had one friend uh that I remember specifically. He was like the foreign kid in the class, in a class full of white kids, right? And um, his name was Damien, and basically the thing that is that I'm like a little hyperactive, and I was walking through I was walking through to go to the first grade door, which is on the left, I think the left side of the building. But basically, I was circling around from the front to the left side of the building, and there were these like pillars, and I was looking over and I saw Damien get off the school bus on the corner, and I was like running over to greet him and going like, "Hey, hey, hey, over here, right?" And I wasn't looking forward, and I I head first beamed directly into one of those pillars, and I started crying, and I had blood coming out of my head, and one of the teachers like rushed over to get me, and my mom was called, and I had to get stitches in the head. And this is probably, I think it was first grade, but I was riding my bike at the time, and I remember having to take it easy because I had stitches and didn't want to reopen the stitches. But I do remember these. I went to a hospital, and I remember the hospital room, but I don't really remember a lot of like what they. I mean, I do remember the procedure where they had me face down, and I could feel them poking around, and there were like a couple sharp pains, but um, it was pretty good experience. But I had to take off school for a little bit, and in the hospital parking lot, there are these like globes, I think. Like they're like globes that like attach that are they're like transformers, right? But they're like attached to the line, right? And I found it weird because like nowhere else had these things. Because most transformers are like cylinders on the ends of on the end of a pole. These were actually like transformers hanging off the line. It was bizarre, but um, okay. So there. Okay. Okay. All right. So there is. I should probably describe. I'm jumping around. I know. I'm sorry, but basically the neighborhood that we're on, it's a dead end. It's it capped. It ended at the end of the road, and um, basically I was told I was not allowed to go around. The around the block, just to stay on the street. We had I had a couple friends on the block. I had a friend down the street. He was crippled. Um, and he had to wear braces and stuff. And I don't know if this happened later on, but basically he I kind of roped myself in um with either a friend that was not in my age group, or a friend that was, either picked on, or what have you, for having a physical disability. And um I'm just going to refer to him as my cripple friend. um that's just I'm sorry, I can't come up with a name that suits him well. But I had another friend who was quite a bit older than me too, across the street. Andy. um and he's the one who introduced me to Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. So I actually watched Dragon Ball GT first, like a good chunk of GT first. And I remember seeing like stickers on his computer, like the computers, um, like the cabinet for the computer. Yeah, this is back back in the day when computers were like a home entertainment system. But anyways, that's like way later on. So I think I originally didn't. I don't remember if he was on living on the street at the time, but that was within the same time period. Um, my first, I think, actual friends on the block were the direct next door neighbors. They were the twins. Um, and they they were quite a bit younger than me. And like I think I was like 5 or 6, and they were like 3 or something. So um I was in first grade at the time. And um I think uh I think I struggled. I mean, I kind of struggled, but I didn't really struggle, so to speak, until it was like third grade. The one thing about school is I was adjusting fairly well, and my problems didn't really kind of pop out. I remember having social issues, but nothing that like broke my ability to go to school. Um, I remember getting, like they did the gold star thing, like you'd have to get a gold star to get a certain score to whatever. Um, and I remember not getting enough, like not getting enough gold stars pretty consistently. I think I remember doing like, yes, and this is when they used to teach cursive. So they taught us cursive back in the day. And um oh, there we go. And so cursive was a challenge for me. I also remember specifically like Groundhog's Day being a thing. It's like where I learned about Groundhog's Day and Thanksgiving and all that. So like a lot of the like American culture stuff was ingrained in the very beginning. And let's see, home life. I should jump back to home life because I'm not really remembering a lot about first grade. I remember I was really interested in Power Rangers growing up. Um, and that was kind of like that was my like really big interest. It was Power Rangers and Sonic the Hedgehog. And with those two things, as they were on TV at one point, there was like a certain time that they were on, and this was like mid early '90s, right? And I was really, it's Sentai. You get the giant robots, and the fighting, the kung fu basically. And that actually reminds me, I do remember being interested in like classic kung fu Street Fighter style animation. back in the day. Oh wow, okay, I think I just unlocked some. Unlocked some earlier memories. I remember my dad. So you remember that hoarder grandma, the hoarder grandma that I used to have. I remember watching um something on that TV in the back room, and my dad being an ultra religious, hardliner, basically was like, this fighting stuff is bad, like you shouldn't watch it. And I think it was like I can't remember what it was, but it was like Dragon Fist or something like that. But I really liked the fighting stuff, like the with the combat, and explains why I like Dragon Ball Z so much. It was, you know, it's all about fighting. So, um, one of the things that that also unlocked was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is like way before any of this other stuff. I remember being really into Spider-Man and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a lot more prevalent at the time. So I like had the action figures, and I had, I would talk about it. And I remember being over, I think, one of my aunt's places, or no, might have been, yeah, like, yeah, I think it was like my aunt, uh, not my aunt, but like second cousin or something like that. I can't remember, but I think I remember they had like a colonial with a vaulted ceiling, right? And if I'm remembering this correctly, this is also when I first saw Jurassic Park. They had like a really big projection TV. I think we did. Um, I think we did Easter one time over there where we painted eggs and stuff. But they had this like divider. I think it was an extension. Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think the back room was an extension, and the kitchen was like cut off. You know how you have that like cut off thing, and then you have like a weird room that sort of flows into it in the back. That it was that kind of thing. Let's see, Jurassic Park. Because if this was in the original, I think was in 95, 93. Okay, so yeah, that fits perfectly within that timeline. Because I think we moved into that house later than that. It was like because I was in an apartment in '93, and I think '94 was the very next year because we were only in that apartment for like a year. So, anyways, yes. So this place I do remember I was into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Jurassic Park had just come out. It was I was going over like my dad would we'd go over to the the cousin's house and um basically do the whole holiday thing, right, with them. And I vividly remember Jurassic Park because it was at times a very scary movie, if you've ever seen it, it's got all of the it's like it was like the perfect movie for the time. But um I do remember also like okay, so there are a lot of things happened in these handful of years, like between 92 and 95. And so I do remember I did like Sonic too. So Sonic was they had like the Sonic Adventures TV show at the time. And um my cousins had a Sega Genesis. And so did my cripple friend who lived down the street. Um I think right around that time I also had gotten a Super Nintendo for Christmas, which I think was 95. If I'm just got to check my timelines here. I'm pretty sure Super Nintendo was 1995. Let's see. No, it was earlier than that. I must have got it way earlier. Yeah. And Super Nintendo came out in North America in 1992. So I must have got it when it was like in the middle of its life cycle, which makes sense because considering considering what was going on at the time, yeah, because I was in the, I think it was in Cub Scouts, and yeah, okay. So Super Nintendo was later, but basically I would go over to like the grandparents' house on my dad's side, and they had original Nintendo. And I remember, and this is like right after they had built the house too. So this is like a new house. You know, they had this big like big ginormous house with like vaulted ceilings, and you know like there was a balcony that was like on the upstairs area, and had this, it was on a lake too, so you know we'd go out in the pontoon and stuff. And but I remember my uncle, who was living with my grandparents at the time, the youngest uncle in this scenario, he wasn't much older than me. He was like probably 14 or 15 or something like that when I was really young. He might have, yeah, I'm 14 or 15. But anyways, he had an original Nintendo, and he had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, right? And that, I remember that game being extremely hard, like extremely difficult to play and win. It's Castlevania, like it's insanely difficult because of what it was based on, you know. Um, yeah, so the memories from that are pretty fairly vivid. But I do remember cigarette smoke associated with those memories. So that was um that was kind of the early video game like interest that I had. I remember being only really interested in video games and TV shows and stuff like that. I never really got like I never really broke out of the like interest of video games, and then like not wanting to do anything else with anyone else. That was like my hyper focus as an autist, um, as an Asperger autist. And I think the thing is that it kind of made it so I could um I could kind of like have my own interests and not like not be bothered by them by anything else. Like so I think I should probably move go back to what was going on at home. Uh oh no. And then I have my other grandparents. Okay, so this, man, a lot of stuff happened right around this time. So like another thing happened, I think in the end of that year, which was 94, if I'm not mistaken. 94 going into 95. And I'm going to check the timeline again, but my grandparents who were living in Florida at the time, on my mom's side. So these are my mom's parents who are still alive. Knock on wood. Keep they keep going. They're very old. um, Hurricane Andrew had hit, um, and they had come back. They had come back to Michigan, because their house is destroyed in Hurricane Andrew, and that was, hold on, Hurricane Andrew. That was okay. It was 92, so it was before we moved into the house. So this is, wow. This is before we moved into the apartment too. So I completely glazed over the Hurricane Andrew thing. Okay, so my grandparents had come back from Florida after Hurricane Andrew, and then they had gotten this like condo. Yeah, I guess you'd call it a condo. It was like one of those conjoined style condos. And shit, I was pretty young, 92. Yeah. Okay. So I remember going over there and being like, "Oh, hey, grandma, grandpa, like I think there was a big fight, like what do you call it? Boxing fight." And I think my stepdad was like really interested in that. Um and they had like gotten like, grandparent furniture and stuff, and I was like really enamored with their Dust Devil vacuum kind of thing. And I was like vacuuming their whole house with a little handheld vacuum. Um, and I think that winter, uh, and my grandma had just was just talking about this like a couple days ago. Um, how out, we went out to because it was snow. It was like I think '92 was like a crazy snow year, and we went out to the nearby, and they live and the area that they were living in is was like an hour away, so it was a little bit away from home. You'd have to travel a little bit, but whenever we go there, it'd always be like a fun thing, right? And we went out to holy shit, there's so many memories packed into 92, 93. um, we went out to a hill to go sled, right? And they bought they bought these like roll up sleds, right? And the roll up sleds were didn't want to stay open. So you had to like pin yourself in them to go, to sled, and they were just like paper thin sleds. And I remember we slid around a bunch of times and had zero control over where we were going. Like it was like the most chaotic like snow sledding I think I've ever done. But and we were super young, so we were like bundled up just like the kid in the Christmas Story where he can't like move his arms and everything. Um and let's see. Oh, right. Okay. And I remember, okay, so I should probably talk about my grandparents too. So my grandma's kind of a hippie. And still doesn't hasn't really shaken the whole like hippie mentality kind of thing. And my grandpa's a Vietnam vet. And he had like he had like stuff like World War II or World War II. What am I talking about? Vietnam era stuff, like memorial pictures and stuff. And but he's a big Trekkie, so I remember him like his like Christmas tree had a bunch of um Star Trek stuff, like Star Trek ornaments all over it, and like different ships, like he had like the Enterprise, and he had the memorabilia, right? And I remember him saying like, oh, when I die, uh, you'll um you'll inherit these, and I'm just like, okay, whatever, bro's pushing over 80 right now. I don't I don't I don't know if he's dying anytime soon. But yeah, so like he also had this thing with his fingernails. He's a Vietnam vet, so he was exposed to Agent Orange, and basically it like cragged his fingernails like Worf's forehead. Um like they were split down the middle, and I was like, "What is that? What is that?" And he would explain just what I just explained, but he wouldn't go really into too many details on it, probably the PTSD, but um yeah, we spent a couple times over there, just doing stuff. But the times that we'd go over there, I specifically remember we went to the video rental store, and we would rent a console. And I remember we would usually rent a PlayStation, and that was like yes, we're back on the video game thing. I know. Zuz Zuz is coming. Hello, Zuz. Oh, sorry, Z. Um, so we'd and this is when you could rent a console from a video store, right? And the idea was we'd get the PlayStation, and then we'd pick a random game, right? And this is I pretty sure this was like 93. This might have been 93, but I'd spent a weekend over with my grandparents' house, and I remember distinctly the original Rayman. And the original Rayman was really cool because no other console had like such insane graphics. We had the original, Nintendo and the Super Nintendo, like just they weren't as good. But I remember spamming the buttons so hard that it blistered my thumbs because I had soft kid hands. And yeah, I mean that like kind of like that's like a bit of that was the experience I had with the PlayStation. I had my Super Nintendo. I had my friend had a Sega Genesis. Like there was there was like a very wide gamut of games and experiences that I had. And my dad had a computer, like a full-fledged desktop computer. So like from early age, I had access to basically every type of platform there was. But I mean, I remember hanging out with grandparents too. Like we'd go out. They were close enough to a lake that we'd actually go out to a lake, and they had actually bought they had a pontoon, right? They actually got a pontoon so we could go around in the lake, and and my grandparents, they moved here because they wanted to watch me and my sister grow up. They wanted to be there, and um we'd go out and play, throw the ball, baseball and stuff. My mom's mom, my grandma, she she would actually take us out, and she'd take pictures and stuff. And there was a thing that she did. I think she did cross stitch, and she like cross stitched one of the pictures of us like playing baseball, like with her. And I think I'm gonna jump back home, but basically, that was kind of the early stuff before my other siblings were born. And let's see. So back on at home, and in the first house that we had lived in, I remember struggling pretty hard with like homework and math and stuff like that, and food. Like food was not one of the things that I liked to do. I really didn't enjoy eating vegetables specifically. Um, I I believe we also had our we had, okay. So before we get into that, there was a big snowstorm that happened. I think in the first couple of years that we were there. I think it was like '94 or something like that. And we had this old lady who lived across the street. And she was, I believe, Russian, maybe. I don't remember, but she was basically she was a foreigner, an old lady foreigner, right? And she lived in this like Victorian era style house with a massive yard and big pines in the front. And it wasn't a Victorian style. It was like the original house, and all the houses that we're in, like the rest of the people that were there, like that was the original house that she was living in. But we all lived in like houses that were just newly built, kind of thing. So like this is a 1920s house across the street with it's like brick, right? But so the thing about her is she was very like old lady, like strict, like I'm gonna show you how it's done, don't cry, kid. I'm gonna show you how to chip the ice away from the driveway. Like she was watching us like shovel snow away from the driveway and going like, you gotta chip it real good like that, like. And I think she died like shortly after. Like I think her name was Jean or something like that. Jean, yeah. So she was like the nice old lady that we knew. But I don't know if she moved out or someone else bought the place. But I remember I remember the we always talked about her across the street, like as if she was still living there. We had our immediate neighbor, um that was my friends. I was over there all the time. um I remember hanging out over at the friend's house one time. And the thing about being just hanging out, and then someone comes in and says something, is it kind of surprises you. But I think my cousin and my mom were driving somewhere, and they came back, and they walked in, and they're like, yeah, we just walked from the expressway because our car broke down. Like we we were just hanging out in the front room, and they said that. And that's all I remember, honestly. And let's see. And I'm trying to like dig for earlier memories. But this is around the same time, I think. Um, let's see. Our neighbor, the neighbor on the other side, um, she had like widowed pretty early. because the guy had like killed himself. He like shot himself in the head with a gun. Um, and there was like people were talking about it for a little while, but the one thing I remember is that their backyard would ice over. Like there was no drainage in the backyard, and it was direct the backyard was directly adjacent to our backyard. So the ice would like crawl across across where the fence was. And we'd get a little ice patch in the very back by the privacy fence. So we had a detached garage, and the detached garage had like a space behind it, but it also had like a spot along that fence where it would ice up. And for a little bit, I was into ice skating, and I would like ice skate back and forth on that little patch of ice. Um, and in the summers, my mom, we one day we just decided, you know what, we're gonna cut down all of these weeds and all these like tall, just it was a tangled jungle of a mess behind the garage, right? And we took the weed whipper, and well, they took the weed whipper and just started just hacking the crap out of it, and just hack, right? And so we tilled and tilling it was insane. So um my mom had, I think, rented a tiller and basically just ground all of that stuff up and started putting like topsoil on it, right? And she started like planting plants like corn. Like I think we had corn going up behind there, and she started like her own garden. And the one thing I remember about that down the road was that she put hay as the over top the dirt to keep the ground kind of moist. But it did get a decent amount of sun back there, not as much as the sun that we get here in the current house that I'm living in. But like, I remember the garden just being like twice my height. Like everything was super tall. Like the other thing about it is the there was like beans, like green beans that she'd grow, and they would like crawl up the back side of the garage, like the wall where the garage is. And I remember hating those green beans because I didn't like green beans. But another thing, and I'm just jumping from thing to thing when I think they happened, but there was we had a big deck in the backyard, right? Um, this was built with a house, I believe. We have pictures of them when my uncle was living there, of them building the deck, and it has a fairly large pergola, and um, like my mom had like hung up a bunch of plants and grew a bunch of vines in between the slots in the pergola, and we had this ginormous tree that like was on the other side of the like on the neighbor's side that like had the one had that had shot himself. Um, the tree had a huge canopy that like covered like the whole backyard, so we'd always have a nice, it'd be nice and shaded back there. But um, so also along that edge in the back where I did the ice skating, there was we had a sandbox too. And I remember being really into building sandcastles and stuff up north, at the cottage, and like because we had a slip, right? And the slip would go in, is basically our own like beach basically. And I remember like building these huge sandcastles and then like pouring water at the top and like making a stream go through the town kind of thing. And I tried to do a lot of that at home with the sandbox, where I would build up a huge amount of stuff and then just like douse it with water to try to make it do the same thing, and not quite getting the same effect. But I had the big Tonka trucks and dump trucks and all that, and that was pretty memory forming, I think, for me. Um, let's see, because shit didn't really hit the fan until I was in third grade. It was all just kind of early memories. And this is like first couple years where I was really into Power Rangers, right? I was really into Power Rangers. I was into the figurines for Power Rangers. My neighbors were my friends. My cousins on my stepdad's side were also kind of like my friends too, right? So I had the eldest cousin that me and him would um have like Star Wars figurines and stuff. And I think this is not quite the time that I was like really into Star Wars, but I was getting there. Um, my cousin had an X-wing, and I had like a snow speeder figurine, but or like a toy basically. Um, but that was like a few years later that started happening. Um, I initially was into the Megazords and stuff for Power Rangers, and I think there was other shows that I tried to watch like Beetleborgs and what was the other one? VR Troopers, I think it was called. Some dumb shit, right? But this is all later on. This is all like I think fourth grade or something like that. Um, I originally had watched. I was really more into things like God. I there were like these like paper figurine, not figurine. They were like placemat things that like popped up. It was like a 3D thing. I remember like it was on the front table in the living room, and um basically I remember watching, I think we were watching Eureka's Castle on TV. It might have been a rerun, or I was it was late at night, and it had to have been early on because um my stepdad still had his truck, and I was like, "Oh yeah, my stepdad's coming home and he's got the truck." And and then I remember Eureka's Castle being there, and oh man, let me see when that came out. Let's see. Yeah, so that okay, Eureka's Castle was 1989 to 1995. So yeah, it's squarely in that era. Cuz I think I didn't do first grade until like 94. Might have been 94, 95. But basically the shit, I'm drawing a blank a little bit on some of the stuff. We had a standard ranch. We had a basement too, which was cool because I get to play my games downstairs too, and not just take up space upstairs. And invade the living spaces of the adults and all that. But I think me and my sister had our tonsils taken out when we were like 4 or 5. So that was a fairly early one too. Oh God, so we had our tonsils taken out. I remember specifically that we went out for ice cream afterwards. But let me describe kind of like what in my medical history what I remember. I remember going under. I think it was that same hospital that I remember the globes from. But basically, we went on. I went under for the surgery. Maybe it was a different hospital, but I think that I don't remember what the IV drip one was for. Um, but I remember going under, and then I remember waking up and just struggling, and then trying to hold me down, and just being in an incredible amount of pain. Um, and I think they had told me the same day that I had like kicked a nurse while I was under. Like it might have been embellished a little bit, but basically I had a involuntary reaction to the the tonsil removal. But I remember like me and my sister both had it done at the same time, so we were both eating ice cream, and we were pouting to my mom, and she's like, I know, I know, I know, that kind of thing. Um, yeah. So first grade and second grade. I think I was in second grade, and I think my sister was in first grade. And so, and this, I think maybe this might be the only second grade knowledge or memory that I have, but I remember that my stepdad would take us to he'd take us to the to school pretty often in his truck, but he would, he was the cool parent. He would take us out to Dunkin' Donuts. We'd get some donuts, and I remember I think he did that beforehand too. But we would go out and get Dunkin' Donuts, and we'd have to, or I think he'd grab them and then take us with him, and then we'd eat on the way, right? And I remember eating mine normally, and I remember my sister had eaten them way too fast and was like choking them down and trying to choke them down way too fast, and ended up like throwing up in the front seat of the truck as we were getting to school. So we had to like stop and clean that up. And um, oh boy, let's see what else happened around that time. I think I I think I might have started Cub Scouts around that time too, because I think you start fairly early when you do that. Um, and I don't think my mom did the Scoutmaster yet. I think it was kind of just like a starting deal, like to try and get, you know, try and get younger kids into it. But yeah, I don't think I had my later friends until sometime later. Let's see. Let me think about this for a second. Um, I think my siblings were being born around this time too. I think my middle brother, I think I think my middle brother, like my mom was pregnant. Oh wait, yeah, no, that's around the same time. Yeah, so I think my parents had like a water bed or something like that around that time. And I remember, and I think this happened after my brother was born. I do remember my mom was like not feeling good, and we had to like hang out in the front room because she was feeling bad. Um, I think it had to do with the pregnancy, but now I know. But at the time, it was like, is she sick? Is she, is something wrong with her, kind of thing, But anyways, my middle brother was born. Um, oh, I remember some stuff maybe before my brother was born. But anyways, so my room was the front room, the front middle room, and oh boy, I'm remembering some stuff now. Okay, so he had when he was born, I think he had taken over part of my room, and I had to deal with the baby crying at all times kind of thing. This is after they moved the baby um from my parents' room to my room. But let's see. I remember Okay, so I remember my stepdad had a friend that came over uh pretty often, not super often, but he'd bring this like arcade thing with him, and I had to go to bed. And as you know, I was not the kind of person that would want to hear a video game in the other room and go to sleep. Like I just could not do it. Um, like it wasn't in the cards for me. And I remember like trying to like sneak out and look at, oh my god, I just unlocked another memory, and sneak out and look at what they were playing, and I got to see it eventually. It was those racing arcade games, like the ones that you sit down in, that they still have, where it's like Cruising USA or something like that. But it was like a home version of it. It was more advanced. Um, but yeah, I remember like trying to trying to be quiet and just listen to it. But let's see. Oh, right. The unlocked memory was that I was like trying to sleep one time, and this is after like the friend had like left with the console thing, or some other day. And I remember I was still wearing pants, and I was like trying to take off the pants because they were like way too tight for me. Like I was growing faster than the pants were, and I was like trying to take them off and like try to like I was struggling with them because they were like tiny, right? And I remember my stepdad coming and go, "What are you doing? Like, what's going on here?" And I'd be like, squeezing the life out of me." So, there was another unlocked memory, and now it has eluded me. Damn it. Um, I'll remember it. I'll remember it at some point. Um, let's see. I think I remember. I remember. Okay, here's a. This is all kind of loose memory, but I remember there was one year we did, and it might have been later on. There was one year that we did their Christmas party. I think it was the Christmas. No, it was New Year's Eve. Yeah, New Year's Eve. We had like people over and stuff for the New Year's party, and I remember running around like a maniac because I was an ADHD crazy demon child, and I remember I remember putting my arms up and going vroom 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 around the room and like and just being like I'm a race car, right? And my parents were repeatedly telling me stop doing that, quit running around, quit making noises like that. And I don't remember what triggered it, but this is definitely like a depressive thing for sure. Where she's like, if you do that one more time, you're gonna be grounded for, you're gonna be grounded for the New Year's. And so I did it, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, and so I like sulked back to my room and went to bed and heard everyone call in the New Year and bang pots and pans and all that. And they came in later on and they're like, "Where were you? What was going on? What's going on?" I'm like, "Well, you told me to go." Like I started crying. Like he told you to go back. Go to sleep. And so I sulked in my room. Um, I had a tendency to sulk when I felt bad, basically. That brings me into, I don't know if this is around the same time period. Um, it might have been third grade, might have been second grade, but so my dad's parents, the ultra religious hardliner, smoker grandparents, right? That we they had an awesome house, right? And this like the multiple times that I've gone over there. We always do this fun like fire pit thing where or they had their like incinerator barrel that we do fire and stuff like that. But we did all that for New Year's one time. Went over there. I think it was like 93 or 94. But these are my two bad New Year's stories. We went over there one time as New Year's, and basically we were like we went to bed after doing the whole fire thing, and it was like, okay, we went to fire. Me and my sister. We were laying in bed and going like, wait a minute, isn't it New Year's? Isn't New Year's Eve? Why are we up in bed? What is happening right now? Why are we in bed? And we called out to our grandparents like, hey, it's New Year's. We're gonna call in the New Year's, and like, go to bed, meh. Being crotchety old people, like, go to bed. And so we, you know, cried through the New Year on that one. But and then we came home and told our parents that, and they were like, oh, okay, no, 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 we're good. We can do the pots and pans thing. We can do the pots and pans thing on the Sunday or whatever that it was. Instead of so we had like a pity, we had like a pity New Year's party, like when we got back home, and that was never again, never going over to my grandparents with the same attitude again. Like, forget it. So, um, it's getting a bit late. Like I'm pushing I'm I'm pushing stuff aside to continue to tell the story. So I'm gonna cap it up a little bit. Um, I am feeling a little better now that I've talked a bit about a little bit of the stories from my past. I appreciate you guys listening. If you have any inkling of
helping me out. Don't have insurance, so it's getting really hard to pay for these like therapy sessions and psychology sessions and well, the drugs are cheap. The ironic part is getting the help is expensive. Getting the drugs for helping yourself easy, very cheap. GoodRx is amazing, but um yeah, there's a link to a GoFundMe on that. If you if you feel like you have any inkling of helping me out, I don't have insurance, so it doesn't pay for any of it. All right, I have to pay for all out of pocket. And it's been a roller coaster, and it's impacting work. I need to be able to sustain myself, and I can't if I'm depressed all the time. So, um, yeah, please do. And if you do, thank you very much. Thanks again, Joycey, for donating the one time. And I'll see you guys in the next stream when I'm feeling bad again, and I'll talk more about from third grade on because that's when shit hits the fan. All right, peace.